So this is a topic that's on my mind most of the time. We're wanting to encourage and we're wanting to develop a culture where people do much better sense making using rigorous processes while understanding the upper bounds of their own sense making. And that the upper bounds don't give the kind of absolute certainty that before certain kinds of development work, people can be emotionally oriented to want. And so, you and I were talking about this previously. The first verse of the Tao Te Ching, this always was so meaningful to me that, so Lao Tzu, whoever that was going to write a book of wisdom. And the very first thing in a book of words was, the Tao that is nameable is not the eternal Tao. The knowledge that is knowable is not the eternal knowledge. And the naming is the creation of the 10,000 things. And the 10,000 things will obscure you from understanding the Tao. So it's like, okay, here's a book about the Tao, and you can't do it in words. If you do it in words, that's not the thing. But then finishes the book, right? That's the key insight. Was it wasn't just the first verse and then nothing else. There's then the rest of the book, which is saying the words are pointing to something beyond what can be captured in them, and see if you can notice what that is. And so it's like, okay, is that just kind of superstitious mumbo jumbo, or what does that really mean? So you're mentioning quantum mechanics. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says we can't know the position and momentum of a quantum particle simultaneously in full. The more you know about the position, the less you know about the momentum, and vice versa. That's an upper bound on the knowable itself, right? It's saying that there is a rigorously unknowable that is at the foundation of all of reality, that there is an upper bound to knowability that is fucking fundamental. That's important. Then you go to Gödel's theorem in mathematics. And Gödel's theorem showed that for any arithmetic set, because David Hilbert was trying to make this process of a complete set of mathematics, a fundamental set of math, a standard model from which all math could be derived. And in the process, Gödel did a proof that showed that that could never happen. One of the most significant things to ever happen in math, because it was, again, an upper bound on knowability. It said for any arithmetic set, I have a finite set of propositions in it. There is some other proposition that is true with that, meaning logically consistent, that can't be derived from a combination of those things, meaning that there is no finite set that will propagate the entire set, meaning if the system is to be consistent, it can never be complete. And so I can, just like position and momentum, I can get consistency, but not completeness. So I'm bound to incompleteness. That's why it's called Gödel's incompleteness theorem. And that's a huge deal. Then Tarski's theorem was a generalization of that from arithmetic to all formal logical systems. The axioms in the formal logical system can't be proven within the formal logical system. They have to be taken. So the system can show its own validity, but it can't do soundness. There's something outside of the system necessary to say, does that validity map to what is outside of it? So these are all upper bounds on knowability itself. And so another way of saying it is, you take all of the study of human medicine before the genome, you're like, wow, there was some really critical shit we didn't even know existed. Then we get the genome, but we don't have the epigenome. We don't have the transcriptome. We don't understand the proteome. We don't understand the exosome, the whatever. So then there's a new thing. We're like, wow, this thing is kind of everything. But the history of the epistemic hubris is not paying attention enough to how much whole new fields emerged that we didn't know before. They were in the unknown set that answer huge amounts of stuff, right? So can I prove that there's nothing that's in the unknown set that is relevant to the topic that I'm looking at? So what that means is I'm studying a thing. I'm studying a body or a cell or a plant or a market or whatever it is. And I try to model it through some small number of variables I can make sense of. There's this thing called supply and demand and rational choices and whatever. So, or there's a thing called mitochondria and ATP and NAD. I'm going to try and model the thing, right? Using what I know of it. And I don't know how tiny a subset that is of what's actually happening. I can't even know how tiny the subset is of the things that are happening. So my model of reality, and this is what science is doing, and it's helpful, right? It allows us to build tech, and the fact that tech works is very interesting. But the model of the thing is not actually the thing, right? The map is not the territory thing. And so if I have a thing, I make a model of it. Now, the map of the thing is the thing for tech, for physical tech that we made, right? And that's the difference between complicated systems that we build that don't self-organize and don't evolve and don't replicate versus complex systems that do self-organize, self-correct. There's a fundamental difference in the nature of those systems. But when we're trying to understand complex systems, which is psychology, biology, sociology, ecology, the foundational things, the model of it isn't the thing. So when I then optimize for the model, wherever the model's wrong, wherever it's missing something is where that thing that I'm optimizing can externalize harm. So I find a specific way that a disease is acting. I find a specific molecular target. I create a drug for that molecular target, that model, and it works, and it stops that symptomology or that aspect of pathogenesis. It causes side effects somewhere else that I didn't know and couldn't have really predicted ahead of time, and maybe doesn't address some things that are upstream from that molecular target that were why that thing was happening in the first place. And so is that useless? No. Is it anything close to knowledge with a capital N or capital K? No, of course not, right? So I might be reading into this. I have no idea if this is how it was originally intended or it's just a nice way to interpret it. But the whole idea of no graven images, no false idols. The way I think of that is that the model of reality is an idol. If I take it to be reality, and that's the too much certainty in the believable thing, the Tao that is knowable is the model, right? That I can fully explicate, that has no more mystery in it of the unknowable set of possibilities. So the model's useful. We're not saying we shouldn't be doing science. Of course we should. The model's useful. And Newtonian gravity, as useful as it was, got massively updated with Einsteinian gravity and quantum gravity, and then that will get updated. And so we want to hold it as useful and not capital T true, which means what we stay actually, our reverence is about reality, which is beyond knowable. I can keep knowing parts, but I can keep doing that indefinitely. And so there's a reverence for reality that means none of my models or beliefs should ever be sacred to me. The sacred is fundamentally unknowable, unexplainable. I can kind of point to it through poetry, which is what Lao Tzu is doing. And so then I'm like, it's beautiful that we were able to come up with a model that's as predictive as it is, and let's use this. And let's not get certain about it. Let's not even seek certainty around that. Let's have mathematical certainty that we can actually make a plane that will work or whatever. But let's keep seeking to understand reality in deeper ways and have a certain epistemic humility bound to that. That's critical. And that's where something, and this is why the very best scientists had this. This is why Einstein said the things about, I want to know God's thoughts, the rest is trivia, and the value of intuition and imagination. And why I think it was Szilard who was saying, of all the founders of modern physics, Johnny von Neumann was the smartest in terms of clock speed, but Einstein had the deepest insights. And what was Einstein doing that wasn't clock speed that had the deepest insights? It was something connected to when he would puff his pipe and look at the clouds and go blank and then come back to the whiteboard, or play his violin and be raptured, that had to do with not just a processing of parts, but a sensing of wholeness. And there's a way that most people do one or the other of those things. Right? They orient either to, say, on this side, something like a monastic process or art, or on this side, something like science, technology, engineering. I would say the full human experience is the way those relate to each other, the way we can seek better formal understanding. Because let's say we're going to make a decision about the electrical grid. I want to actually use science to understand very formally what the risks are and how to build the thing and the materials and all like that. I also want to understand that there might be risks that are not being factored in our current risk assessment. So I want an elastic possibility to update this with the input of new information. So how do I say this is the best of what we know, and let's move forward with it? And how do we keep not just, we don't want to resist new information, we want to be actively seeking how we're wrong.